Easter isn't religious, it's historical, and that's why it deserves your attention. Before Easter became a holiday or a tradition or a special Sunday at church, it was a claim about something that happened in history. If it didn't happen, well then Christianity doesn't really matter. But if it did happen, then it matters more than most people want to admit. During this short video series, Evidence for Easter, I am not asking you to believe anything. We're just looking at evidence, historical and archaeological evidence that places the story of Jesus in real time with real people in real places. So we'll start with a name the four writers of the accounts of Jesus' life were very specific about: Pontius Pilate. Now, one of the most common criticisms of Christianity goes like this. The biographical accounts of Jesus' life that we call the Gospels, they say, well, they were written too late, too far away by people who weren't actually there. Now, if that were true, you would expect the accounts to be vague, especially when it comes to historical details like names or titles or political figures. But that is not what we find. Again and again, the biographical writers place their stories in a very specific time and place, and archaeology keeps confirming they got it right. Now, here's why that matters. Writing accurate history in the ancient world was not easy. There was no internet. There were no libraries full of reference books, no way to fact-check details decades later if you were living in another region. And yet these biographies consistently get all the small things right. So the most reasonable explanation is also the simplest one. They were actually reporting events they experienced firsthand, or events that they carefully investigated through eyewitnesses. And that brings us to one of the most important figures in the trial of Jesus, Pontius Pilate. According to all four accounts, after Jesus was condemned by the Jewish leadership, he was taken from Caiaphas' home to Pilate, the Roman governor responsible for Judea. Now, his role is central to the crucifixion narrative. For a long time, Pilate was known only from some ancient writings. Skeptics question whether the gospel accounts had exaggerated or maybe even invented his role. And then in 1961, that changed. Archaeologists working in Caesarea Maritima on the Mediterranean coast uncovered a stone inscription. Now, part of it was missing, but what remained was unmistakable. It read, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea. And the inscription also names the Roman Emperor Tiberius, placing Pilate's governorship firmly between AD 14 and AD 37, the exact time frame that the biographical writers of Jesus' life describe. This was the first physical archaeological evidence ever discovered for Pontius Pilate's existence. And it wasn't a religious artifact, not a Christian text. It was a Roman inscription. And it confirms two critical things at once: that Pilate was a real historical figure, and that the writers placed Jesus' trial in the correct political and historical context. Now that matters because legends don't tend to anchor themselves to verifiable officials or specific titles or precise time frames. Eyewitness reporting does that. So the Pilate stone, as they call it, doesn't prove the resurrection on its own, but it does something just as important. It reinforces that the writers knew what they were talking about. They were not inventing a story long after the fact. They were describing real events involving real people in real places. So if the gospel writers were careful and accurate about verifiable historical details, what does that suggest about the rest of their account? And how does it change the way you consider the bigger claims of the Easter story? We'll explore that more in the next episode of Evidence for Easter.